postal history that I've ever stuck my face into. So hopefully I can make this intelligible to everybody. But at times it felt like I've bitten off more than I can, properly chew here. But anyway, so with those two caveats in mind, we'll get to the meat of things. So, okay, where to start? We'll start with this map, which is probably familiar to most of you folks because I have used it frequently in the articles in the news. But it's a map. Oh, sorry. Is there somebody making a comment? No. Okay. The map here actually I like it because it demonstrates kind of what the military political situation was in the old Kingdom of Hungary right at the end of the First World War, and in the kind of the southern front of the First World War, the equivalent of the November 11th armistice was the Belgrade Military Convention, which was signed on November 13th, 1918. And that was kind of a ceased fighting between the armies of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Allied forces, which, for all intents and purposes, at that point, were the French and the Serbs who had come up from the Aegean coast around Salonika and had kind of moved through Serbia. And then at the 2 days before the Belgrade Military Convention, Romania declared war on the Austro-Hungarian Empire, largely just so they could participate in the spoils of the war. And so the Belgrade Military Convention kind of drew this green line here, this thick green line across the southern part of Hungary. And this was the line up to which the Allied forces were to advance as a result of the armistice. And that happened within a couple of weeks of the signing of the armistice. By the end of November, the Serbian army had pretty much occupied all of the area up to the green line over here, and the Romanians had occupied up to the green line over here as well. Now, the one thing about the Belgrade Military Convention that was kind of a little bit interesting is that in these areas that were occupied by the Allied forces, Hungarian civil administration was to remain in effect pending the final settlement of frontiers through a peace treaty. The exception to this rule initially was Croatia, which is this area down here north of the Drava, and in late October, I think the Croatian Diet declared its independence from Hungary and entered into an association with Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Slovenia to join the kingdom of the Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, which I will henceforth abbreviate as the SHS kingdom, being SHS being the Slavic first letters of each of those three ethnic groups. So that's kind of the general situation. The specific area that I'm going to focus on this afternoon is the 4 counties that made up the Temesvar Postal Directorate. And these are illustrated on this map. And initially in November, or by the end of November the Serbian army had literally occupied pretty much all of these 4 counties, except for a thin eastern slice of Krašo Srem. My apologies for the mutilation of the Hungarian. So they actually occupied just about all of this county, and to their forces actually wound up to the east of Lugos. And at the same time, the French occupied the areas around Szeged and around Arad, up at the just to the north of the 4 counties of the Temesvar Postal Directorate. So in this area, it's all occupied by the Serbian army, but the Hungarian postal system remained functioning, and as it was supposed to under the Belgrade Military Convention. And so here are the Hungarian postal rates for which were in effect through 1919 and into 1920. The ones that matter here are the first column. And so these rates remained in effect in the area that was occupied by the Serbs, and the postal system functioned pretty much as you would expect it to have functioned in Hungary, with a couple of differences, which I will illustrate through a couple of covers here, which I think are quite interesting. The first one is a cover that was posted in Temesvar, and it was sent to Schuttenhofen in Czechoslovakia on the 12th of January 1919. And it's franked with a couple of 10F Károly stamps, and the 20F rate is consistent with the inland, the Hungarian inland letter rate, the first weight step. And this is because up until the beginning of 1920, all of the old countries of the Austro-Hungarian Empire still were dealt with under the inland rate. So in effect, they were considered to be domestic mail for the Hungarian postal system. The next cover is a foreign cover, which was sent from Lugos, Alan Sobel's favorite place in Romania. And it was franked with...
I'll never be able to visit.
Yeah, but it's still your favorite place, Alan.
Sure, yeah.
So it's franked with 25F, which was the current Hungarian foreign letter rate. And I mean, both these covers look like they could have been posted in Hungary, except for 2 things. Obviously, the location of the cancel, but also the stamps, like the Károly stamps and the Zeta stamps from that series that was issued in 1918 were invalidated for use in Hungary on November 23rd, 1918, when they issued the stamps that were overprinted Kostarsaság. But in the occupied territories, and in fact in all of the occupied territories, the Károly Zeta stamps that were invalid for use in Hungary continued to be used widely in the occupied territories. And I would suspect that was a function of the fact that your ability to get new postage stamps from Budapest was kind of a bit circumscribed by the fact that you had a front line between you and the capital. And so, like, any Hungarian stamp was used for postage and accepted in the post offices, including old Turl stamps that had been invalid since the end of 1917. Um,
And
so
when
if
was
you're,
the Caddoy invalidated?
sorry, what's that?
When was the Caddoy stamp invalidated?
It was invalidated on November 23rd, 1918.
Okay, that's what the Magyar catalog says also, November 23, which I have crossed out, and I have inserted December 1920 based on the Black Book.
Huh. Well,
Something I found a couple of years ago. So I don't
okay.
know what's right.
Oh, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. I was working on the Magyar Posta catalog,
Yeah, and it
and
says November 23rd, but
yeah,
not the Black Book.
yeah, huh. Well, that's interesting. I
Whatever.
mean,
What's important is that your cover is January anyway, so,
yeah,
right?
yeah, but also too. I mean, you'll find the Karoi Zita the stamps and turls used well after January 1919. And in fact, actually, you'll find some of this used into the end of 1920 within the SHS kingdom. But I'll get to that kind of later on in the presentation. Um, so the next item or the next event of significance is during the kind of late March, April 1919, the Serbian army actually winds up withdrawing back to this dotted line in the four counties, and the area around Lugos and eastern Temes County winds up being occupied by the Romanians. But the Temesvar Postal Directorate still continues to function through the four counties. And in May 1919, the Temesvar Postal Directorate was they were starting to run low on some of the more used values in the Hungarian postal tariff system. So they wound up taking some stamps that were not particularly well used and surcharging. So this is the first Temesvar issue, and it was they put a 10F surcharge on a 2F harvester, and then a 45 on the 45F on the old war charity, the 10 filler war charity stamp from 1916. And the 10 filler stamp paid the inland postcard rate under the Hungarian tariff regime, and 45 paid a registered inland letter rate. And this again was just the difficulty in getting new supplies of stamps from Budapest. Then in July, the beginning of July, the Temesvar Postal Directorate, there not only was it difficult to get new supplies of stamps from Budapest, it was also different. It was also impossible to get funds back and forth between Budapest and Temesvar or Temesvar. And so the Temesvar Postal Directorate decided that the only way that they were going to remain even remotely solvent was to raise the local postal rates. And so the second column in each of these two tables were the new rates for the four counties of the Temesvar Postal Directorate that were put in place in July 1919 on the 1st. And at the same time, they also surcharged a bunch more Hungarian stamps for some of these new rates. So the 30 filler, which was put on the 2 filler harvester, paid the new postcard rate. 50 filler paid the new letter rate, and 1 Corona 50 paid the cost of a registered inland letter. And then they printed 3 postage due stamps of relatively random values. So the next kind of event of significance comes in late July, where the Serbian forces wind up withdrawing back to more or less this shaded line here, which was it's more or less where the international frontier was established under the Treaty of Trianon. But there were a few adjustments in the mid 1920s, but it's more or less the international border. So the Serbian forces wind up withdrawing from Temesvar, and as well as kind of the northwestern part of Temes County and the eastern part of Torontal County. And so this happens in late July, and this area is gradually occupied by the Romanian army through the first couple of weeks of August. And so there was a period in here, it was relatively brief, where the area, Temesvar, was occupied by neither the Serbs nor the Romanians. And it was during this kind of interregnum, if you will, that the Temesvar Postal Directorate overprinted, and I think I've got the number here right, Chris, but it was a set of 52 stamps that they, or 52 different values that they overprinted, just Banat and Bacska 1919. Very, very little of this stuff was actually used on mail. It's extremely rare. The rationale for printing the issue was so that they could have something to pay their postal employees with. So this stuff was issued to the employees of the Temesvar Postal Directorate, who in turn would go out and sell this stuff to dealers and collectors as a way of getting some portion of their back wages. So I mean, that in itself is kind of a bizarre notion. So early August 1919, the area around Temesvar is occupied by the Romanian army, and the Temesvar Postal Directory winds up overprinting another or surcharging another set of stamps for the Temesvar rates, the Temesvar postal rates. The 30 filler, again, postcard rate, 1 Corona is the cost of registration, 150 fillers, the rate for a registered inland letter, and 3 Corona would pay the combined express and registration fees. So, and these are the only stamps that the Temesvar Postal Directorate was actually issued under Romanian occupation. Again, very little of this stuff was used on actual mail, because 3 days later, the Romanian postal authorities took over the post offices in the Romanian occupied portion of the Banat. And so on July 20th, you had the Hungarian postal authorities were basically tossed out of the post offices, and they were taken over by the Romanians. So the third Temesvar issue was only relevant for the rates that it was issued at for like 3 days. So the Romanians take over the administration of the post office. Romanian postage rates wind up going into effect, and I've got the Temesvar rates that were in effect prior in the first column of these two tables, and the last column here is the Romanian rates that went into effect. And they are these Romanian rates here in Bani, and multiplied by the 2-to-1 exchange rate. So there was 2 corona, or there was 2 filler to 1 Bani, or 2 corona to 1 leu. I think, I no idea how you pronounce the Romanian. And so you could use either of, like, you could still use the Hungarian stamps. Hungarian stamps and Hungarian currency remained valid in this Romanian occupied Banat until March 15th, 1920. And so on the Serbian side of the line, what they did is they moved the kind of the remnants of the Temesvar postal directorate to Nagybecskérek, which is, let's go back to our map here, which is this town right here in kind of the middle of Torontal County. And the Temesvar postal directorate rates that had been put in place at the beginning of July 1990 or 1919 remained in effect through the area occupied by the Serbs. So now you had like 2 sets of postal rates, one that applied on the Romanian side of the line, and a different set that applied on the Serbian side of the line. And though in both cases Hungarian stamps remained valid for postage, on the Romanian side until March 15th, 1920, and on the Serbian side of the line, it's kind of it's not quite as clear, but I'll get to that in the next slide here.
This is wonderful, Robert. It really is.
Well, we're only halfway through, so hold your compliments for the end. It might fall apart. So the one thing, as I kind of delved into this topic, that became very murky is that all of the catalogs and the literature talk about what happens on the Romanian side of the line, because it was the Romanians who had occupied Temesvar, and that seemed to be the preoccupation of folks. And it was not particularly clear, at least initially, what happened on the Serbian side of the line. And I mean, at the time in August 1919, obviously the Temesvar postal rates continued in effect, but ultimately they were superseded by the SHS Kingdom postal rates. Not entirely clear when, and I can't find anywhere in the literature that discusses this. So on this particular point, we're going to have to resort to some examination of the empirical evidence to understand, or as best we can, what happened on that front. Now, in the rest of the SHS Kingdom, the Hungarian stamps remained valid for postage until October 1st, 1920. And they were frequently used after that, but technically not kosher. And Hungarian postal stationery remained valid until April 15th, 1921. And so looking at that, I didn't really see why there should be any difference between what happened in Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina and what happened in the Serbian-occupied Banat and Bacska, but we'll see. We'll test that assumption as we go through the rest of the presentation. So before we get to before we get back to kind of what happened to postal rates and what happened to the validity of Hungarian stamps and postal stationery, there's one other event that has a significant influence on the postal history of the area, and that's in late 1919. And again, this is stamps are running out. There's no way that the Temesvar postal director is going to get anything else out of Budapest, because I mean it's through this period that the country had descended into the chaos of the Soviet Republic. And so the SHS Kingdom Authority started to supply post offices in the Bacska and Serbian-occupied Banat with the SHS chainbreaker stamps, which were originally issued for Slovenia. And then as stamps, local and Austrian Hungarian stamps ran low in Croatia, they were supplied to the Croatian post offices, and the same thing in the post offices in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then, so I mean, from their perspective, it was, well, stamps are running low in the Banat and Bacska. What the heck? We got some of these Slovenian ones. We might as well use them here too. So the first instance that I have found, or the first reference to the use of the Slovenian chain breakers, the SHS chain breakers, in the Banat and Bacska is November 3rd, 1919 in Bács-Földvár. But most of the early uses that I've seen referenced are through like late November, December, and into January. So here, this slide illustrates the two earliest uses that I have in my collection, and one of them is a postal money order from for 74 koruna and 80 filer from Pančova in the south of Torontal County, and then the other one is the cutting from a postcard with a 30 Vinard chain breaker on it, and it's canceled in Újvidék, if I've got the pronunciation even half right, on December 30th, 1919. But eventually the chain breakers wound up being distributed to like literally every post office within the Banat and the Bacska, and they become increasingly the stamps that you find on correspondence and covers, letters, postal stationery. So back to rates. Up until January 1920, all of the mail that I've seen referenced anywhere in the literature is actually franked for the Temesvar Postal Directorate rates. And this cover here is from Csaba's collection, and I've used it before in articles, and largely because I think it's an awesome cover. It's December. It's got the 10 filler stamp is from the first Temesvar issue, the 30 fillers from the second Temesvar issue, and it's sent from Pančova to Usora in Bosnia. And the franking of 175 filler pays the Temesvar second weight step registered inland letter rate, which was 170 filler. And this is canceled December 22nd, 1919. And the last pieces of mail that I have been able to find that were franked at the Temesvar rates in the Serbian occupied zone are from March 1920. And this slide here is of a chain breaker postal stationery card, and it's been upgraded with a chain breaker stamp. And 30 Vinar pays the 30 filler. 30 filler postcard, inland postcard rate, which is going to Austria, so it's still the inland rate still applies under the Temesvar rates. And it was probably dropped in a post box, but it was still mailed at the Temesvar rates. The other one, or the other piece of mail that I can find from March 1920 is a registered letter that was sent from Zombor to New York, and it's franked with 175 Wiener and Slovenian stamps, and that gets to the second weight step for a registered foreign letter. And on this one, you can see that the envelope was opened and then it was resealed, and the Serbian censor mark for Novi Sad is right up here on the front of the letter. So these are the last two pieces of mail that I have found that were posted at the Temesvar rates. Now, on the other hand, the first piece of mail that I can find that was franked according to the new SHS Kingdom rates is this rather messy looking postcard that was mailed in February 17th, 1920. And it's franked with 20 filler. The 10 filler, or the 10 Vinar stamp that was used to operate the card is a Slovenian postage due stamp that was used as a regular stamp, which wasn't particularly rare in the SHS Kingdom, where a lot of post offices, they ran short of regular postage stamps. They just sold postage due stamps and used postage due stamps as regular postage stamps. So this letter this card was probably dropped into a post box, because if it hadn't been dropped into a post box, Hank Butenkamp informed me that the postal clerk would have bisected that 10 Vinar stamp, cut it in half, because otherwise he'd have had to contribute the other 5 Vinar he'd have to pay that into the till at the end of the day. So I suspect what happened here is that somebody just had a 10 Vinar stamp, slapped it on there and said, whatever, it's 5 Vinar more than the postcard rate, but anyway, go, and just dumped it in a post box. Because the Temesvar postcard rate would have been 30 filler. And there's no postage due markings on this at all. There's no indication that this was short postage. So it works at the SHS Kingdom rate. It doesn't work at the Temesvar rate. Now, there's a guy by the name of Tonas Orr, who was a member of the Yugoslavia study group for quite a number of years, put together a monograph on the postal history of the Banat and Bacska. And he actually also illustrates a couple of pieces of mail from late February, early March that are also franked according to the SHS Kingdom rates. So this is kind of, it's not, I'm not hanging my point here just on this one particular card. There are other pieces in the literature that were franked at the rates, but the interesting thing is that you find pieces of mail that are franked at both the Temesvar and the SHS Kingdom rates from the same area at the same time. So I don't know how to explain that. Maybe it was just that whatever rate you walked into the post office and demanded, the postal clerk gave you. I don't know. So by April 1920, the only mail that I can find is mail that is franked at the SHS Kingdom rates. So it appears that somewhere between, the end of March and the middle of April, things changed and just the SHS Kingdom rates applied. Here's this is an old Hungarian postal stationery card, and it's been operated using a 5 Vinar chain breaker stamp, and to meet the 15 feeler SHS Kingdom postcard rate. So it's perfect. It's the Hungarian indicium to the postal stationery card is still valid, and they've added another 5 Vinar to make up the 15 Vinar rate, and it's mailed from Bácsföldvár to Zombor, April 11th, 1920. And then I've got one more from April, this is kind of an interesting letter. The image of this was supplied to me by Bill Maddox from a buddy of his. And again, it's franked with a mess of both Hungarian and chain breaker series stamps. But again, 1K90 makes up the current registered express inland letter rates under the SHS Kingdom rates. So, and the other things to notice about this, just going back to the validity of stamps and postal stationery, is where April, Hungarian postal stationery is still valid. So the assumption that the general SHS rules continued to apply in the Banat and Bacska, or the Serbian part of the Banat and Bacska, seems to hold. Same thing with stamps. The next kind of event is in May 16th, 1920, there was a new set of SHS postal rates that were put into effect. And at the same time, they devalued the koruna from a 1-to-1 exchange rate to a 4-to-1 exchange rate. So if we go back to this slide, the last column here is these new rates that were put in effect in May 16th, 1920. And they were actually, the rates themselves were put in place in para and dinar, and then translated into feeler and koruna with that 4-to-1 exchange rate. So let's go back down to here. We've got another Hungarian postal stationery card, and it's been operated with a 50 Vinar chain breaker series stamp to comply with the new 15 para postcard rate, which is equal to 60 feeler or Vinar. as one's sent from Bacsordas to Ljubljana at the end of May. This is from an eBay auction that I unfortunately did not win. The next cover is kind of an interesting one, but it's a commercial cover, registered commercial cover sent from Baja in the northern part of the Bacska to Ljubljana, end of May 1920. It's franked with 180 feeler in chainbreaker stamps, which complies with the new SHS registered inland letter rate of 45 para, so multiplied by 4. The interesting thing about this was that Baja, which is located in the far northern part of Bacska, which is, I think Baja is up in this area here. It was actually part of the Bacska, the small part of the Bacska that was actually returned to Hungary under the Treaty of Trianon. So this is an example of chain breakers being used in what was eventually Hungary proper during the Serbian occupation. So there's kind of, as best I can get it, is the evolution of the postal rates that were used up to the Treaty of Trianon, and then, I mean, obviously after Trianon, it's part of the SHS kingdom, and obviously their postal rates apply. So the last question, but the use of Hungarian stamps and postal stationery. I mean, we've had up above some examples of where this stuff is used well after March 15th. Here's another couple of examples. One from Alan Sobel's collection. It's a parcel card cutting canceled in Pencho on the 22nd of March. The bottom cutting is from Johann Savenhausen's collection, and again, it's cutting from a Hungarian postal money order card. But again, you've got 2 5F harvesters on the bottom paying the money order rate. And in a lot of the literature, you've got all kinds of examples of parcel card cuttings, money order cards, money order cuttings, letters that have all made use of Hungarian stamps well after March 15th. And in the Tunis or monograph on the Banat and Bacska, he's got a couple of examples of stuff in June and July where Hungarian stamps and postal stationery were used as well. So I mean, I think that all of that, I think, kind of confirms the assumption that Hungarian stamps were valid on the Serbian or the SHS side of the line well after they had ceased to be valid for postage in the Romanian occupied part of the Banat. Now, the one last question, which I am going to have at here, is the use of Temesvar, the use of the Temesvar issues. And all of the literature that I have been able to find and all of the catalogs talk about these stamps being invalidated on March 15th. And most of the literature in the catalogs either are silent on whether it was on both sides of the line or state specifically that they were invalid on both sides of the SHS Romanian line. But none of this makes sense to me, because why would you invalidate the first and second Temesvar issues when every other Hungarian stamp is valid for postage in the SHS kingdom? Why would you just invalidate these stamps? That makes no sense whatsoever. And I doubt that the SHS postal authorities would have worried about that, because their approach to Hungarian stamps and postal stationery was basically, it's valid, it's a problem that will take care of itself because it'll all wind up getting used up. So good enough. But of course, finding this stuff used on anything is difficult. This stuff's not particularly common. And how common is it once you get past March 15th on the Serbian side? Well, not very. But there's a guy by the name of Zdenek Skok, who's put together an exhibit on Exponet. And I don't know whether people are familiar with that website, but if you're not, it's worth going to. It's like, the amount of information on it is absolutely stunning. It's wonderful. And exhibits from all over the world and all kinds of, stamps, postal stationery, postal history. It's a really fantastic resource. But this guy Skok illustrates a parcel card, or it's a cutting from a parcel card, which means the stamps would have been applied at a post office when somebody took a parcel into mail. And it's franked with a 10 filler Temesvar stamp from the first issue, and it's canceled August 16th, 1920. So that kind of leads me to believe that the consensus on this is wrong, and that the Temesvar issues, like the other issues, the other Hungarian stamp issues, were in fact valid until well after March 15th on the Serbian side of the line. And so that kind of brings us to June 10th, which is when the Treaty of Trianon was signed, and which basically partitioned the four counties along the lines of this kind of shaded line here. So this kind of northern part of the Bacska around Baja went back to Hungary, and the rest of this line here became part of the SHS kingdom, and all of this on the other side became part of the Kingdom of Romania. I guess the one kind of postscript that I would throw in here is just on cancels, and which you've seen a lot of the Hungarian surviving Hungarian cancels on. In fact, actually, I don't think there's a single cancel that's not a surviving Hungarian cancel on any of the stuff that I've showed this afternoon. But this stuff actually winds up continuing to be used well into 1921. And it's only over the course of 1921 that, in this area anyway, a lot of the cancels are, I would say most of the cancels are probably replaced by the end of 1921. And so, folks, that's it for this quote expert unquote presentation.
It's very good. Thank you.
Fantastic. It was wonderful.
That's great.
It was really very good.
Okay, so now how do I unshare screen?
Go down to the bottom and unshare. Or no, it's actually the top, I think.
It's the top. Is there an unshare?
Stop sharing. You see that?
Oh, stop share. Here we are.
Stop sharing, yeah. Oh,
hey, voila, you're all back.
Excellent. We're all back. There we are. Robert, that was great. I think it does qualify as expert, so thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, folks, for indulging one of my postal history passions.
Robert, may I ask a question?
Fire away.
Yeah. There was one card that you showed. It had a chain breaker indicium. It was postal stationery, and you said it was eBay auction.
Mm-hmm.
You remember how much that one went for? You didn't get it, I guess.
No, I didn't get it. I'm sure it went for north of $25.
That's all?
That's kind of north of my, or that's kind of the limit. That's my default limit on bits and pieces of postal stationery.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought it was a beautiful piece.
Yeah, it was there were actually two from eBay auctions on there that I didn't get, and the one from like the May 1921 from Bat Jordash, that really irritated me that I didn't get it. But anyway,
That's very good.
All right. Well, thank you again. Just want to let everybody know there is another presentation coming up in 2 weeks. On September 10th, Jan Jaap is going to talk about German censor on Hungarian World War II mail. So I will send out an invitation. I doubt that we can get our ads in place to let people know about it before then, but we hope that we'll see you all and others on the 10th. And then Chris, you're up on the 8th of October. So we really look forward to that too. So the next two should be very interesting.
So if anybody has any questions that they think of as they mull this over, please don't hesitate to just flip me an email and I'll be more than happy to attempt to answer them anyway.
Why do you spell Oyvidic with an accent?
Why?
Yeah.
That's what the cancel said.
Oh, fine, good. That's a good answer.
There's the answer.
Cancel is empirically correct.
But that answer isn't something that is constant across time.
No, I like that answer. That's good. You're an empiricist.
Yes. Well, in this particular case, you have to be, because the literature is definitely lacking in the kind of the detail that explains what the hell went on. So,
right. Regarding the August 1920 piece at the very end.
Yeah,
that's your empirical evidence that the stamps were still valid that late.
Yeah.
Despite the literature.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just the literature just doesn't make any sense. I mean, given the prevailing attitude of the SHS postal authorities to, using old stamps, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But as you said, jokingly, and I thought it was a great joke, that you can frank the items with whatever you wanted, and the clerk would take it, right?
Well, but
1920. So who cares? You want to use this old stamp that's no good? I'll let you.
But I'm thinking it, because it's a cutting out of a parcel card, that this guy would have taken the parcel into the post office to mail it, right? And so the clerk is sitting filling out the postal the parcel card. He's looking in the till, going, okay, stamps. We need X amount of stamps. Bang, on they go. The postal clerk's making no distinction in terms of the like he's looking at, oh no, that one's not invalid. I mean, they use whatever stamps you had on hand, and so
it might have been invalid, and it went through anyway.
That's entirely possible, Alan. It just doesn't make any sense that they would have invalidated those stamps and not the rest of them.
That parcel card, was it franked properly? Did it pay the two stamps together? Do we know if that's the right rate?
No, because it's a cutting.
Yeah, sure, right.
Right, because they all of the weight part of it has been cut off, and it's just the stamps. You didn't even actually I should check the. So no, because he doesn't display the back of it, so you don't even know where what the destination was.
There might have been other stamps on the card, and then maybe that 10 filler wasn't counted.
Well, I'm just thinking a parcel card, if it's in the post, if the clerk in the post office is applying to applying the stamps, I think it's a reasonable assumption to say that the clerk was counting the stamp as valid. So,
yes,
Robert,
on that card, just one point, under the stamps, there's I see a written 72. And in the place where in most cases the total amount to be paid is noted.
Hmm.
So I was wondering about that.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, no, you are correct. It looks like 72. I mean, the bottom of it's kind of pasted over with that 50 Vinar Chainbreaker series stamp. But yeah, so there must have been another stamp on the back of it that made up the other 12 filler for the raid. Oh no.
But I was thinking that maybe the overprinted the surcharge stamp was counted as 2 filler because of the
That's-
72.
Good. That
Now
works.
there is on the card in the where it's being cut off, there's a 28 filler filled into the card here. Just a second, let me share the screen again. Can I share this screen?
Yeah, just go
share
down to the bottom
Yeah.
as you can share.
Come on.
What's that? Yeah,
I'm just talking to the computer. Because there's a notation of 28
28.
filler, but that might be the value of the
That's the
parcel, right?
value, yeah.
And we've lost the Corona part of the
Hmm.
of it. But yeah, so is that 7? Looks like it. Doesn't look like the top of a 2.
Hmm.
And this is a 50 filler stamp, right? And that's not the top of the 5. So I think, Johan, I think your observation means that there's another 12 feeler on the back of this thing.
Mhm.
Okay, let me add my
20,
2 cents
yeah.
worth, Robert. Can I add my 2 cents?
Absolutely, Chava.
Okay, it looks like it's a collect on delivery parcel slip. But the 28 is the price, part of the price that they need to collect upon delivery. So the 28 has nothing to do with the franking.
Okay.
Okay, and usually these parcel cards, wherever there was space, the clerks applied the stamps to them. And the other issue is that these cards were sold by the post office, X number of years after the parcels were delivered. And they were machete cut where most of the stamps are supposed to be and sold in bulk by weight to collectors. So any additional stamps on the backside or whatever would have been cut off.
Yeah, or if they weren't on that part of the card that was guillotined off, right? So
Yeah, right.
You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a mystery. It could be 70 something. I can't make out anything. And yes, Johan could be right. The stamp could have been counted as 2 filler instead of 10. So it's one of those mysteries that'll be forever a mystery.
Yeah.
Does Skoke show the reverse? Not.
I don't think so, but let me just check. No, he does not.
Should have.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. He just mentions the 2 stamps on the front and the fact that it was postmarked.
Even if there's nothing to see, he should have showed the other side.
Alan, I could not agree with you more.
Well,
So